Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Today is, what? Microphone. We're going to call the meeting to order. Today is Thursday, February 18th, 2016. It's 7:05 p.m. We're here for the purpose of a Stormwater Communications Committee. I'd first like to start by opening it to public comment. If you did not have an opportunity to sign up on the sign-up sheet, now is your time. Please raise your hand if you have public comments so I can get a count. I see 1, 2, 3, and I ask you to go over to the microphone when I recognize you, and we ask that you, same guidelines apply that we apply during council meetings, which is we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes out of respect for the work that we want to get done this evening and out of respect for other folks who may want to speak. Please state your name for the record. Address is optional, and we're going to start in the front and then go back. So, Mr. Crumry.
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett. I'm going to read a story here and see if I'm being a good family man or not. My 17-year-old daughter does not yet have her driver's license, and she works approximately twice a week at a retail store off Route 83. Usually my wife drives her, but occasionally I drive her to work once a month, approximately 10 to 12 times a year. I want to share with you a recent conversation I had with my daughter. Sophia, now that you work at Kmart and request use of my truck approximately 10 to 12 times per year, you have placed my truck into an encumbered status in perpetuity. I respectfully request that you purchase my truck at the current Blue Book price and provide me compensation of up to 150% to allow me to purchase a new pickup truck. To which Sophia replied, Dad, I'll be using your truck approximately 10 to 12 times per year, and only when Mom can't drive me. I think you're being more than a little unreasonable to require that I purchase your current truck, and you're definitely being unreasonable to require that I pay up to 150% of its current value. Sorry, Sophia, that's the deal. Take it or leave it. Dad, I'm only asking for use of your truck on an extremely limited basis. You'll still have access to your truck over 350 days a year. Sorry, Sophia, your request will place my truck into an encumbered status in perpetuity. You can purchase my truck at the current Blue Book price and provide me compensation of up to 150% to allow me to purchase another truck. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Dad, how about we make some improvements to your current truck to benefit both you and me? In fact, the improvements will benefit everyone in the family. I can purchase fog lights, a new 10-speaker stereo, Bluetooth connection for your phone, a backup camera, spray-on protective bed liner. I'll even purchase one of those Stop Elmhurst Flooding magnets for your truck. Sorry, Sophia, my original deal remains. Take it or leave it. Wow, Dad, so your truck is more important than helping your family. A few weeks after having that conversation with my daughter, she asked me to drive her to work one Sunday afternoon. I replied, Sophia, Sophia, can't you see that I'm washing and waxing my truck? I have more important things to do than to drive you to work. Unfortunately, then, just last week, Sophia slipped, fell, broke her arm. She was in severe discomfort and begged. No, she cried, asking me to drive her to the emergency room. I directly replied, no, I will not drive you. My truck is over the recommended miles from the last oil change, and I will not dare place any slight wear and tear on my engine to drive you to the ER.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, I think you had your hand up.
Kendra Thompson, 204 East Crescent Avenue. I'm here tonight to hopefully listen to some meaningful conversation between the city and the Park District regarding the next steps for York Commons. As we know, the city passed the request by the park for York Commons by approving the addition of the shutoff valve to the current IGA. With this approval, it would seem the IGA has been passed on both ends, and we can move to a workable design between the city's Christopher Burke engineers and the park's V3 engineers. In an email reply received yesterday by Mr. Jim Rogers, He noted last December the Park Board members who serve on the Stormwater Subcommittee were pleased to suggest that the city work to complete the detention basin prior to Smalley Pool opening this summer. He also noted that he remains hopeful this can still occur. I am also hopeful this can still occur. 38 Crescent families awaiting another spring-summer with potentially heavy rains are hopeful this still can occur. 38 Crescent Avenue families who live in fear when it rains are hopeful this can still occur. 38 Crescent Avenue families who've been patiently waiting and watching this IGA process start and stall for 2+ years are hopeful this can still occur. Please work together to jointly agree on a final set of design specs per the terms of the IGA and get this project moving ahead. 38 Crescent Avenue families need your help, and this process has reached a very transparent mudslinging level with residents caught in the middle. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan?
Kathleen Sullivan, thank you for passing the IGA here on Tuesday night, I guess it was, this week. I look forward to hearing updates on what the steps are for your commons between now and getting shovels in the ground. Additionally, looking forward to hearing updates on Golden Meadows and, of course, all the projects with the schools. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who did not have an opportunity to sign up or showed up maybe a little late who wants to address? Ms. Pedotti, floor is yours.
Carrie Pedotti, 242 East Crescent. I want to thank the City Council for passing the shutoff valve and getting that IGA approved. I hope shovels get in the ground soon and no more obstacles will be put in the way, as I feel like us residents are being held hostage between all these negotiations. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have want to comment before I close this part of the meeting? Absolutely, sir.
Chris Farrell, 138 North Avon Road. I too want to thank the council for passing the IGA this week. However, I'm hoping that this meeting, unlike the last few, we get past just talking about York Commons on the Park District side, and we hear a little bit more about Golden Meadows and the subsequent projects that are going to follow the York Commons. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that's everybody but one person. But I think they're betrothed, so that's okay. All right, we're going to move on. That wraps up public comment. Does anybody have any general updates before we dig into the agenda? Instead of throwing it to each one, I'll just ask, does anybody have any general updates before we dig in? John, do you have a general update?
Yeah, just want to make sure that, oh, I'm sorry. Talk 205 went out, update by the superintendent, who kind of reviews all the moving parts that are going on in the district right now, and I strongly urge that you go through it. It's long, it's detailed, but it tells how many things are happening in the district, and I think it's important for the community to realize that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Couple things I want to state for a general update, and then we'll get into it. And I'm hoping that it will be a short but productive meeting this evening as we continue to tick things off the list. As far as it relates to current projects, and I think most are aware of this, but we have we now have a stormwater website, or a website dedicated solely to stormwater and sanitary and our projects. I encourage everybody to go there. You can look up your individual project that you're interested in and get an update. And we try to update those as committee meetings and council meetings happen. So I would encourage everybody who is interested or who's watching to utilize the new website, and certainly always you can call your alderman or city staff. As far as the folks who are up here tonight, the Madison project, I think everyone's aware, is signed and put to bed in terms of the legal issues. We are in engineering right now, and we anticipate that that will be completed shortly. The projected start date for the Madison project that primarily helps the folks on Washington is the last day of the school year. If we get our engineering done before then, and if we can show the school district that we can begin certain parts of that project safely without affecting operations, then we'll approach them with that. But we're not at that point yet. But the plan is for that project to happen this year and can be completed within this year. Bryan Junior High, the gravel lot, that'll be talked about tonight. As far as it relates to the Park District, I know that several folks mentioned it during public comment. We will be talking about all of these, but I'm happy to this is the moment, it's like handing over the envelope. This is the signed agreement, the IGA. The IGA that the City Council approved at our last meeting. What did I say? Most of this, thank you, Pat. The majority of the City Council approved is the final form of the IGA that was provided to us by the Park District. So while there was a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion, ultimately the IGA that the Park District provided to us is the one that I have signed here. There's a signed copy in here and 2 additional copies. I'm going to hand these over to Angela.
Thank you.
So to give you an answer, Park District has to sign it, and then as Mr. Rogers had mentioned, and I know actually I saw him today, he apologized for not being here. I know he has another commitment that had to take precedent over this, and appreciate Angela being here taking over.
Thank you.
But the next step on that is Park District, Carolyn Ubriaco needs to sign it. And I know that we have tentatively talked about a timeline. The Park District wants to get it done sooner than later, and I think that I speak for every elected official on the city side. We want it done sooner than later. So engineering is wrapping up on that, and that was talked about in committee, and we'll get a shovel in the ground just as soon as it thaws out. So that project will happen this year with the assumption that the Park District will sign the agreement that we've handed them. That's the general update. We'll get into the details. By luck of the draw, Mr. McDonough, you go second. We're going to start with the Park District and York Commons, and I'll turn it over.
Okay. One comment, Mr. Morley, yes. On the IGA. Part of the IGA is that we have 75% drawings, which Greg, our engineer, has begun to preliminary look at those. So we will direct him to get with Luke with any comments as per the IGA. So then it'll be in Christopher Burke's court to get it back to the Park District, and there's timelines for doing that in a quick manner so we can keep it moving back and forth. That's paragraph 5 in the IGA.
No, as you addressed me as Mr. Morley, I apologize, Ms. Ferrantino, for my informality earlier. No, that's good. You did the right thing. I was the one that was reminded. So, okay, so you guys are working on it, is what you're saying, and
yes.
we're moving full speed ahead.
Yep, Greg will be getting with Luke, so he's already started to delve in, but now that this is signed, we will get him to do that.
Okay, sounds like we know what we're doing on that. Any additional comments as it relates to York Commons? This side? No? Anyone else? We're good. Okay. Golden Meadows. I can give an update as it relates to Golden Meadows, and if there's any comments or questions between the groups or any feedback from Park Board, certainly encouraged. Let me use my magic. Okay. This is why we're here. We have a lot of rain. This is York Commons, which ultimately ended up to basically this. Let me jump back. So this is York Commons. This is the West Lobe. This is where we ended up. It looked a little bit like this for a while. It was kind of this shape for a little while. But upon closer review, there's a lot of nice big trees right along York Road here, York Street, I'm sorry. So we altered the shape a little bit and expanded it a little bit north. We're still able to get 10 acre-feet. So that's what York Commons looks like. That's the intention. I'm sure there might be tweaks along the way as we get into the engineering drawings. Okay, so this is Golden Meadows. This is East Lobe and West Lobe of Golden Meadows. As most will recall, this is these are the Union Pacific tracks? These are the Union Pacific tracks. I was going to call it Metra. This is the highway over here, and this is that corner of Hampshire. And this park basically is split into two lobes. We have an east lobe and a west lobe. The city's original proposal was to create a soccer field here with off-street parking. And now we have moved on. The Park District came back with a different proposal. This is what we're talking about now. This is, for all intents and purposes, what this looks like. This is the west lobe of the park. And this primarily helps the folks on Avon and Pine and those folks down there. The current status is that the Park District has rejected a dual use use here that the city was proposing on either one, and wants to go the conversion route, which means that they have to sell us the land and they have to go purchase other land. And that's kind of where we are. There's one other point. Oh, this is before the Public Works Committee right now. The Public Works Committee went into detail about what would it mean to purchase the property, what they would want to do with the property. We are in receipt of a letter from the Park District November 19th, in which the Park District stated their terms for all properties involved. As it relates specifically to Golden Meadows, the Park District has requested a 1.5 times multiplier of fair market value. And that's where it stands right now before committee. So they want us to purchase this land from them. They want to get an appraisal, which we've kind of agreed in principle how we'd get that appraisal. Get 3 qualified folks and then take the average, I think. Yeah.
Can we correct something on that?
Sure.
The offer from the Park District is appraised book value or up to 1.5 times the appraised book value, depending upon what property we end up getting.
I haven't finished yet.
Okay, well, it seems that it keeps coming out that we're asking for 1.5 times, so
well, you
if
know,
you can correct that would be great.
You know how I am about misinformation, Vince. So, the proposal from the Park District was 1.5 times the appraised value when they go purchase other land. If they happen to find other land, and there's certain restrictions as it relates to land, that this land has a restriction on it, a DNR restriction on it. So there's certain parameters that the Park District has to, that we would have to follow, and the Park District has to follow in purchasing replacement land, size, value, et cetera. Right now, the Park District has asked for 1.5 times appraised value, and we have a process for that if they should be fortunate enough to find land that meets those criteria, and it's cheaper than 1.5. Let's just say it's 1.2, then the city would pay 1.2 for that. If it's more than 1.5, the city, that number is capped, and the city would pay 1.5 times the value. If it's less than the appraised value, the city would still pay for the full appraised value. As I said, that's before Public Works right now. I think that it's probably going to be one more meeting at Public Works. The next step for them would then be a report to agree to or propose any difference in the deal points, along with an IGA. Our attorneys are working on an IGA. We have obviously a template, because originally the IGA we were going to do for all 5. So we have an IGA that's kind of hammered out. It just needs to be tailored toward this specific project. We anticipate that will happen probably one more meeting. I don't think it'll be more than one more meeting in committee, and then it'll go to council. At that time, depending on whatever council approves, Park District will get the city's response or proposal.
Mayor Morley, could I say one thing?
Sure.
So if the property is more than 1.5, then the Elmhurst Park District would pay that overage to replace the land. So that's the other piece.
Okay.
Yes.
No, you're right. You know, the other thing I'll point out is there's an opportunity to approach the DNR and not have the citizens of Elmhurst pay a dime for the land they already own. But that part's been rejected by the Park District. So, all right. Any other comments? As it relates to Golden Meadows, I know that the ball's in our court in terms of the IGA. The other thing that was discussed, I can tell this, and I think that Commissioner Graff and maybe Jim Rogers, Mr. Rogers, was at the last committee meeting. One of the things, and I think probably off of this deal point memo, I'll call it, from November 19th, probably the only proposed or substantive discussion that would be a change would be the discussion was, can we put it in escrow? And in fact, I think Mr. Rogers addressed the committee for a short amount of time, which was part of going to the IDNR is the conversion process to sell land and buy land. Usually you have to have every part of that process buttoned up and purchase, have the land ready to purchase. It's almost like one of those things where you buy your house and sell your house on the same day. You kind of have to have that all lined up. My request to the Park District, if we were going to go down this road, was let's, at the very least, if we're not going to approach the DNR for dual use at no cost, if we're going to approach them in a conversion standpoint, let's at least approach them together and say, can we put X amount of dollars in escrow? My sole goal would be to get a shovel in the ground as soon as possible. The discussion at committee, and Mr. Rogers is aware, is the committee thought, okay, does it need to be, since as the Park District pointed out, the actual payment can be anywhere from 1 to 1.5 times appraised value until a piece of property is identified. Could the escrow account hold just appraised value until a piece of land is identified, and then the city would, if there is any additional monies to be traded or provided, the city would do it at that point. So that's, I don't think that's new to Mr. Graff because he was in the meeting, but that's one thing that might come out of there. Mr. Rogers, said he understood what the conversation was, but that's about it. So I think that's it as it relates to the city from York, from a Golden Meadow standpoint. Mark.
I just want to make sure that we're on task, that everything that we've got on the table right now is all that's going to be discussed. There's not going to be anything new coming up down the road saying that, we want another 150 years on the garage agreement or anything like that. We're done, right? We're in agreement that what's on the table right now is going to be what we're going to be dealing with this agreement. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go with, like I said, I'm calling the deal points memo for reference sake. So the November 19th memo that we have from the Park District is the deal points that we're looking at, in addition to all the other, what I'll call, information that really was hammered out in the IGA for the past 6 months or whatever it is.
Would that escrow conversation be part of the IGA, then what goes into escrow, or would that be a discussion here? Would that?
Question, isn't it?
No, it would be we can approach the DNR with any proposal we have. So it would probably be an IGA.
Okay.
It'll
Thank
say,
you.
They have to approve what's in escrow?
Well, ultimately, they have to approve whatever we ask them for. So they could approve, we can approach them and say, here's our plan. We'll put 100% of value in escrow, and we will commit to the city of Elmhurst. We're pretty viable. I think they would agree with that. We'll commit to, upon purchase of property or identification of property, we'll write a check and put the additional amount, if there is any, in the escrow account.
If they'd let you put $1 in, it'd be fine with us. I mean, it's really whatever DNR says. So if you guys want to suggest $1 and they say great, so it doesn't matter to the park board. I think we obviously trust you from the money standpoint. So I think we just need to get in front of them and what amount of money needs to go in there, if any, or does the appraised book value, whatever. I think that's really their shot to call. We're open.
Well, we clearly don't want to put any money into it.
Well, and if they'll say that's okay in good faith with doing this, I don't think we have a problem with that. No. So we're open to going to them with any amount, as long as they approve it, because they're going to have to approve the project with, with that stipulation. So.
I understand. I think that the IGA will, my understanding also, apologize, I left my readers in my office. No, I'm either dealing with what the memo says or what my recollection is. It's my understanding the Park District will not approach the DNR until the IGA is finalized. Is that correct? Okay. And I think the request, and I think it would be quite frankly more impactful, since I was able to get a meeting with the head of the DNR originally, certainly the city has offered to go join the Park District in that approach, because I think it would be impactful for the DNR to understand that whatever we end up agreeing upon, we're doing it together to try to convince them. So that is our continued hope and offer, that we will be approaching them together, because the agreement is not just with the parks. It obviously includes parks and city. Alderman Mulliner.
Just because you guys have all had the discussion with IDNR already, I just want to make sure that both of these two ideas have been floated in front of them, putting money into an escrow, et cetera. So we're not going to go through a process of putting together an IGA and find out that the DNR says, no, we're not going to be able to do that. I want to make sure that we don't waste a lot of time doing this. If it makes more sense to talk to them, make sure that we're on the right path prior to doing the IGA, that may make more sense.
Well, the one thing I would say that I agree with the Park District is it's their land. We can't approach the IDNR without them. So the question that Alderman Mulliner has is, I know that in the meeting we had with the DNR, we talked about dual use, which in my opinion at that meeting, and Vince was there, and I think Carolyn and Jim Rogers and Jim Grabowski, Patty Belloc, I can't remember Wayne Rosenthal. At that meeting, they were open to, at the time, they were open to dual use, and their definition of dual use was just allowing water. The discussion of conversion with an escrow account wasn't discussed. So it's a good point, Alderman Mulliner. As I stated originally, our idea was to just make it dual use and not pay for the land. So I guess the question's back to the park board, and Alderman Mulliner brings up a good point. Would you consider approaching the park? Would you consider approaching the IGNR before the IGA is finalized? Because let's just say that takes 6 weeks. Does it make sense to get at least a conference call and call them and say, here's what we're thinking? Or if they say, you know what, escrow doesn't work, doesn't matter. So the question is, can we approach the IDNR and talk about some of these deal points before we have a formalized agreement?
I think we should just go with the whole thing and go quick. I think they're waiting for us to come with a package, and I don't think it's unreasonable to talk about putting a small amount of money in escrow, and I think we should just go as fast as we can.
So that's
we're ready to go with you guys.
So that's no.
I think we should just go and take it and ask them that you don't have to put it in escrow, that we work well enough, that the promise is good enough, and then they'll decide. And if they decide, well, no, we really want you to do it, that's their shot to call.
I just want to be clear. We can call them next week together, or you want to wait for the IGA?
Let's talk to the executive director on Monday when he's back. I mean, he's in the details. We really can't, speak to the details he knows more about.
You could support the idea, though.
I don't think it's a bad idea, but we're ready to go with the whole thing, so as fast as you can put it together, we could go next week to the DNR. So, I think the important thing is to get everything together and get to them with one shot and not drag it out into multiple meetings. That's kind of what they told us. Come with everything completed, and then we'll entertain it. So,
and I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that if the conversation was just about dual use the last time and we weren't really talking about this conversion the last time, just to have that quick conversation with them and say, is it okay if we come forward with this concept instead, to make sure we don't spend money?
We talked about this in the meeting.
Did you? I don't know. I wasn't there, so
we
that's
talked
why I'm
about
asking.
all the options, and they said we'll put everything together and come back to
Okay.
us with one
I just
package.
don't want to waste attorneys' costs and everything else on it if we're not going to get it from them.
And DNR has the standards for conversion. That is one thing they have. That's where all of this has come from, the number of acres, the value of the land. So that exists. That's not a new concept to them.
Yeah, I think the escrow thing is probably the one hook that we will throw them a little bit.
Yes, I'm just trying to answer.
want to go faster with the shovel on the ground, and that's great, we get that, and we're all for it.
Are we talking about something that doesn't really matter without the executive director here, who needs to make the decision? I mean, I'm hearing a lot of thoughts.
We don't know, I'll be honest.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of thoughts, and if they're useless to have any kind of, unless you guys are going to say, yeah, we support this idea. I haven't heard that yet.
It seems
I've
reasonable.
heard it's a good idea, but I haven't heard, yes, I support you guys. This is a great idea. Let's move forward.
I don't think anything's going to matter between now and Monday.
And I still haven't heard it.
So I think it's a good idea, so let's make
I just
sure-
don't want to be talking about things that matter not when we don't have an executive director here. If it matters to have him here, then I would rather have those conversations when he's here.
Let's wait till he's here. Otherwise, okay, we're wasting time. Let's wait till he's here.
Okay, so if I had to summarize where we were on Golden Meadows, the deal points memo is being evaluated and an IGA is being crafted by the city. I would anticipate that the committee will have a report coming out after their next meeting. Pardon me, I'm going to just check my calendar. Back, can I have your readers? Okay, committee meeting is on the 22nd, which means that we actually have a 5th Monday in February. I don't believe it. So let's assume that the Alderman Wagner, as the representative of the Public Works Committee, I'm going to ask you to do your best to get that decision out of committee on the 22nd, which means that a report with regard to the city's stance on Golden Meadows and response to the deal points memo will be before council on the 7th. That also, Mr. Grabowski, gives you enough time with the attorneys to make sure that we have an IGA drafted as close as we can that reflects the will of the committee and potentially council, so that on the 8th we can deliver in whatever form it is to the Park District. Does that sound good?
And the district meets on the 9th and the 23rd, so if we get something on the 8th, I don't know that we'd have it on our agenda for the 9th, but we will do our best to keep things moving, just to give you our meeting dates.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I know at the last Public Works meeting that IGA was hot off the presses. That was kind of, I think the term was used. So you got a couple weeks between now and then. I think it wouldn't be unreasonable to get a draft to us sooner than after next city council meeting.
I'm certain we can do that. There might be 2 or 3 points that are still decided by committee, but everything else without question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Howard. It's frightening. He knows where they are in my office. Oh, this is the communications meeting. Okay, any additional comments or questions on Golden Meadows for city? Park District?
No.
No, we're all good? Intergovernmental agreement status. I think this is just a template we stamp out every couple of weeks. We've already talked about that. IDNR, we did talk about that. It says, if I heard what I heard, it's Commissioner Spaeth thinks it might not be the worst idea in the world to place a call to the IDNR about an escrow question, but we're going to defer to Mr. Rogers, and we'll figure that out. Other projects as it relates to City and Park, we've discussed East End, Crestview, and Wild Meadows Trace. I know that we either put a memo or a letter together based on Alderman Honquist's request 2 or 3 meetings ago, which was, hey guys, East End, Crestview, and Wild Meadows Trace, the parts that we're looking to utilize. East End has shifted, the Park District shifted the original request over to DNR land, but I think the ball was in your court in terms of East End, Crestview Park, and Wild Meadows Trace. We had a pending question from Alderman Honquist that I think either myself or Jim wrote in a letter saying, hey, much like York Commons, those 3 areas are passive, and the current plans for now are for them to remain passive. So this was kind of a response to the deal memo out of this committee meeting, which was, would the Park District consider approaching the IDNR for dual use for East End, Crestview, and Wild Meadows Trace instead of the proposed 1.5 times multiplier of fair market value? And I don't think we have a response to that yet.
I got it. At this point, the Park Board is not interested in cumbering additional open space with detention basins to provide relief for an approximately 11 remaining homes that would be impacted. However, as we discussed at our last meeting on January 14th, The district believes the Park District and city staff should discuss alternate ideas for these 3 sites similar to those that the city has already utilized, including the purchase of properties, storage vaults underneath of parking lots, or underground storage that could provide stormwater detention, as well as open space for recreational opportunities at ground level. Sorry for reading that, but I wanted to get it right.
No, Ms. Ferrantino, I'm asking for a little clarification.
Sure.
I think half the room over here is hard of hearing based on what's going on.
Sorry.
What's going around. Did I hear you correctly that the Park District is not interested in approaching the IDNR to utilize this land for free, or the Park District's not interested in utilizing the land at all?
We're the latter. We're not interested in encumbering those. We would like to talk about some alternates that came up, and I believe it was Alderman Mulliner who brought up, potentially, is there, and this is just one example, at Crestview, for example, could we do storage under the parking lot?
Sure.
Is there other opportunities to still get the stormwater detention for the residents, but without encumbering the park space? And that would get rid of the price tag on the land that is DNR land.
Okay, so this is I would say news. I mean, it's good to know where we are on this, where we sit on this stuff. But so the East End, Crestview, and Wild Meadows Trace are off the table as proposed in any version. I think the Park District's aware. I think the public's aware. The whole reason that the land was identified and proposed is because it was the cheapest option for the city and the residents to move in that direction. But what I've heard is that, city, we understand your request. The answer is no, but if we can help you with additional creative ways of doing it, maybe that works. So I'll use your example, and I think Alderman Mulliner used it in one of our meetings. Put it under the parking lot. Just an example, and that is certainly something that, this is like if you took decision modeling in college, you go here, and when this closes, you go over here. The reason why we didn't go over here first is the rule of thumb is underground storage or some of these other alternate designs are about 5-time costs. So that's fine. It's not my preference. I'm not fine with the idea.
Mr. Mayor?
But I understand, yes.
Can I address what I said at that meeting so that we make sure that we're clear on that? The comment that I made was that there was no detailed plans at that time. That's what Director Rogers had said. And he said that there was a possibility that there was going to be some changes in the facility at that time. And my comment was that at that time, when those changes occurred, it could make sense to put things underground. It was not to do that as the main focus. So let's make sure that we're correct on what was said at the meeting.
Any other comments?
I just have a question,
Sure.
if I may, along this. Since with that idea, the open space off the table now, how do you guys propose us do the parking lot? Let's say are you talking about stripping the concrete away or the asphalt, digging the hole, putting the detention in, and then covering it back up with the parking lot? Is that exactly how you see it?
That's one option, yep.
How else would you do it?
I think we're talking about brainstorming these options with you between staff.
So we're brainstorming.
That would be
All
one
right.
initial.
Let's brainstorm. So how else would you do it?
I don't know. That's what staffs are for. So that's what we came here to talk about.
I've got a brain
Let's get our
myself. I
staffs
can think,
together.
I don't know any other way to do it outside of, supporting the cement or asphalt platform and dig underneath it and then put a lot of lives at jeopardy.
Kind of like what you
That
did
seems like crazy.
downtown across from Amici's.
You don't like what I did?
Kind of what the city just did downtown.
Hard of hearing, sorry.
Across from Amici's, they put the underground storage in and blacktopped over it, right? That was a great example.
I think that was city property though, wasn't it?
What difference does it make? It's just
Well,
an
now there's a
example
financial
of-
transaction that you guys are making us handle.
We're talking about what could be done. That's something that could be done.
Right, we're talking
How
about a
it's paid
space
for
right
is-
next to the parking lot that's empty. That's an actual designated open space. That's it. So if you guys want to use the parking lot, and there are other
I'm
options
not
to
here to
do
debate
it.
it with you. We're giving you the options. If
Well,
you
I thought we
wanna-
were brainstorming.
We said that the staffs would do that.
You said that.
That's what we said in our park board meeting,
No, you said it.
and I'm saying it again, yes.
Just be correct.
You are correct.
Okay. East End, Crestview Park, and Wild Meadows Trace off the table for now. If there's any other creative options between staff, we'll entertain those. For the record, I would say that any other creative options will certainly cost the residents more money, but we appreciate a definitive response from the Park District on those. Any other issues, Mr. Grabowski, anything else as it relates to Park District projects?
Nothing comes to mind, no.
Anything else from city representatives about Park District projects? I don't want to be remiss. Mr. McDonough, would you like to weigh in on this conversation? Okay. I think that's it. I think that is Park District and the representatives clear on, certainly I think we're clear on Golden Meadow, York Commons. Is Park District clear on the next steps for Golden Meadows? What we're going to be doing, what to expect?
Yeah, we're hoping for an IGA.
Yeah, we'll get you something. I mean, you have a pretty recent copy as well when we decided to split this stuff up about 2 months ago, but we'll get you something.
Well, the new one was hot off the presses last time. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we'll get you something. So, all right, we're going to move on to cities and schools. Madison's not even on here, and I gave an update. Let me give an update as far as it relates to city's take on Brian, actually on all the projects that are here, and then I know Mr. McDonough is here, and we'll see what he has to say. So as it relates to the Brian gravel lot, well, let me back up. As it relates to Madison, I know that school district and the city were very interested in getting that Madison IGA hammered out. And that the feeling was once that IGA was hammered out and a lot of the deal points in there about who's responsible for what, et cetera, could be applied to future projects. So we're happy that that's signed, sealed, and delivered. I already mentioned that engineering's underway, and I would say start of the project will be last day of school or earlier, if we can work that out. So then the next step, and I know that I've talked to President Ebner and Emily Bastido, who is the newest member of the communications team, and Dave Moyer, that our interest was getting the Brian gravel lot done as quickly as possible. I know that Jim Grabowski and Dave Moyer have had numerous conversations, emails back and forth. It's been talked about in a couple of these meetings, and also and independently I've talked with Ms. Ebner and Ms. Bastido and Dave Moyer a little bit about phase 1 and phase 2. So right now, the Brian gravel lot, which is in the southwest corner, oh, I'm sorry, off the table, off the table, off the table, still off the table. Park District, School District. Okay, so here's the soccer field in Madison. This is the one we're moving forward with. All good to go. In fact, just so public knows, where's my pointer? City's also looking into potentially expanding a little bit here. We obviously own this property. We own this property, the south end. So we're entertaining pushing this out even a little bit further if it gains us a little more. We think that we might actually get an extra acre foot if we engineer it properly. So I think that's good news for the folks on Washington. So appreciate the support from the school district on this one. Okay, so here's Brian, screenshot of Brian. We're talking about the southwest corner right there, that gravel lot. Here is a different view of it. This hasn't changed in terms of the engineering. It's a 3-to-1 slope. It would be fenced in. This is that gravel lot. It would be pump evacuated because this hole goes deeper than our current stormwater system. This holds 23 acre-feet, and according to Burke, that would help bring, I think, 122 or 123 homes out of a flood, out of water going into their homes during a 100-year event, and we all think that's fantastic. So that's the Brian gravel lot. It's the end of the slideshow too. Okay, so Brian Gravel lot. There was some initial conversation at the very beginning between Mr. Moyer and Mr. Grabowski about, hey, can we build a building, or can we do this, or can we do that, and kind of do potentially even look to shared resources down at that facility, much like we have with the Park District. And I was of the feeling, and this is the phase 1, phase 2 that I explained to Ms. Ebner, and I know we've talked about it publicly, and we talked, Dave Moyer's aware of this. That's phase 2 as far as I'm concerned. That is a very complicated and ultimately I think where we should get to for the residents of Elmhurst, that shared resources, whether it's mechanics or land or what have you, will save the residents money. But that, honestly, that would take at least 2 years in my opinion to hammer out, even without any politicians in the way, just between staff. So phase 1, which is take this property right now, which is just passive, what I'll call passive storage, my term. Take that equivalent area, go over to our Public Works garage, grab the same amount of passive storage, and utilize it. If there is some overlap, like let's say we've got we already have a place where we store gravel, and the school's storing gravel, we can combine it. So that's really phase 1. Where the conversation is between Dave Moyer and Jim Grabowski is, hey, let's get an appraisal on this land, okay? Because the thought was the value of the land that the school district owns and the value of the land that we might allow them to use, there might be a difference, or as my friend Jim Kennedy would say, there's a delta. Yeah, engineer, exactly. And then the conversation is, okay, if there is a delta or if there's a difference, then how do we address that? You know, do we write a check? Who knows what? It hasn't been discussed as to whether or not it would be a lease swap and we'd still retain the property, or whether it would be an actual purchase of property and lease. That has yet to be hammered out. But the idea at that point was, that's kind of it for phase 1. Evaluate the land, get an appraisal. If there's a difference, figure out how we address that difference, and then get a shovel in the ground. Is that your understanding, Mr. McDonough?
Right. I mean, it's going to take a signed agreement.
Absolutely.
To make sure that it reflects the intention of everybody. And
so
that's, you know.
And my point is, and I know that most of it's between Jim and Dave, but it's my understanding that that's, if I had to summarize, that it's that difference in value that's probably the biggest thing that we need to hammer out, which is fine. I'm unaware at this time of any additional requests from either side that would prohibit this. And my point, the reason why I say that is, this is also going to go to committee very soon, so that you have a formal proposal from the city with an IGA and a report. So that's going to happen, I would say, probably within the next month or 6 weeks.
Just to you know, make sure, the appraisals do help set market value and the disparity. I mean, the properties are not identical in terms of their value. But there are costs that result from this that need to be addressed in addition to fair market value. This is moving certain operations a drive away. It's
so
not next to the
you want some
building.
gas?
What's that?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we'll actually buy you some futures contracts.
I mean,
and
it's
gas.
staff time getting to and from. It's, you know, just having a remote facility has some certain inherent costs that you normally address before you put something on the market, and then you absorb those costs out of the fair market value. I don't think that's the intention of this exchange. I think the exchange is about making us whole. And so not only is there fair market value, but there's specific costs attributable to moving our stuff out of the way.
Okay. I will, one second, and then I will ask City Manager Grabowski to try to get as many of those details from Dave Moyer as possible.
They're purely operational.
And I'll go back to my comment that I'll call it passive storage, but that's, you know, that's part of my take on it. Anyway, I know that we just got the appraisals actually.
Better than junkyard.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't gotten the microphone yet. That's coming. I know that last time Emily was here, Ms. Bestito, she said that Dave Moyer was securing some appraisals, and I know we got them. I haven't had a chance to read them. I scanned them. We got them at 5:15. I think you were copied on the same thing. Right. So we just got them. But I can tell you that this will go to committee very shortly, and between Dave and Jim, you guys get an IGA, I would say, and maybe you want to prep the board 8 weeks at the outside, probably sooner. So you'll get an IGA, our proposal. You'll get a report out of committee.
I just ask you, is courtesy, if you could share with us what it is you're sending to the board so that it doesn't contain something that's inconsistent with something we're assuming to be true. Because that would actually
no problem. I mean,
that would slow things down.
You're going to see it. I can tell you this: it'll be at a public meeting, so you're more than welcome to attend.
I mean, before you bring it up there and everything, just let us take a look at it so we can say, you know, yeah, that reflects our understanding of the arrangement as well.
Okay.
I mean, it's something that in intergovernmental agreements that I've done before, that's just common that you do that, and it keeps you both out of trouble.
You know what he wants?
I think so.
Okay, great. So that's the status of it.
Yeah.
Ball's in our court, literally, as it relates. I mean, I know that you guys sent an appraisal. Haven't had a chance to digest it more than look at a couple of the numbers. Now we'll try to put that into an IGA, the best of our understanding, what you're looking for, and we're going to get it to you guys as soon as possible. So.
Difference a little bit. I did have a chance to think about the differences between the two properties and what is your phrase for it? What the gravel lot is the
gravel lot.
the gravel lot. Passive vehicle storage. I like that, John. And the lot that's south of our public works area were looked at and appraised, and there's a major delta, I think somewhere around the $600,000 mark, where similar properties on one side are $1 million and some change, and the similar property that we own is $450,000. I think that delta, if you will, needs to be discussed a little bit, like who the appraisers were maybe that were looked at it, and how could there be that big of a delta with the similar property? That's all. I'm a little concerned. I don't think it would make a lot of sense for us to start talking value issues before we've read the appraisals. But I know that one win over from our attorney to the city's attorney was a summary appraisal of each property. And so you can kind of look and see why it is. Is there a plan, Jim? I'm stepping outside my role here. You guys have talked about the details. Is there a plan to exchange full appraisals later on? Because this is just a summary report.
I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, I understand what Alderman Wagner says, and I, like I said, I know he had an opportunity to look at the reports, and there's quite a difference. I think that ultimately, this will be part of the IGA that says if we are to discuss how the other party, whichever party it is, gets made whole or is accommodated for this change or this delta, this difference, certainly part of it will be what I see, something very similar, pardon me, that we have with the Park District, which is we'll agree collectively on how to hire an official appraiser and agree that we will be, I don't want to say beholden, but we'll agree to the method that we get to. I know that we appreciate that this was the school district's first shot at getting it appraised. I think that the expectation would be that both sides would come to final formal appraisal. So that's this one's empty. So Alderman Wagner, I understand your point. There's a big difference in the current appraisals. I think that collectively we will come up with a more formal way that we can agree upon that, not that I don't trust the school district, but this is their folks telling them what they think it's worth. I think we all understand what that is. I don't think that school board wouldn't expect us to do something similar, and we're going to figure out how to agree upon the values. That sound right? Alderman Mulliner, you haven't said your buzzword yet. Here's your chance.
It's finally my chance to talk about the junkyard. Thank you. I just wanted to add that. No. Yeah, the cars do work. The trucks do work that are in there. I guess a couple of things. I'm going to go back to a couple of things because I just want to be clear on what I heard. what you're asking for, in addition to the cost of the property or whatever the delta is that we figure out here, you're also asking for a cost of, because we're moving the operation a mile and a half down the road, you're asking for a cost difference. You're going to be looking for some type of makeup of those costs. Is that what I'm hearing? Out of a facility, I just have to state this publicly, out of a facility that your vehicles go to at least twice a week to fill up without a gas. They're working out of that facility right now because they go fill up their vehicles at that location to put gas in them. So I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that all of a sudden we're hearing, well, there's some additional costs that may be involved in this. To me, the logical thing and the best thing for the taxpayers is, of course, the long-term solution, which is what the mayor mentioned before, and that is to get your facility into our facility so that we're sharing as many resources as possible. That's why I support a land lease, not a sale. But I think that long-term we need to start looking at that being the solution and not, I don't want to say play games with little dollar amounts, but that's really what we're looking at doing here. I mean, I understand that it sounds like big money to everybody, but if I own a business and I've decided that I'm going to move my business from the north end to the south end, that's a business decision that I make, and it's not costing me that significant amount of money. Basically what you're asking for is you're asking your maintenance department, which is not a huge department, to in the morning go over to a garage that's located on Riverside Drive rather than at Bryan, and you're asking them to start that process from that location rather than the other location, and I'm sure somehow we can come up with a way to accommodate at that location some way to get, you know, a first morning meeting going or whatever you need to do. So I'm just concerned about additional costs that we're unaware of at this point.
You know, I think that's why this discussion needs to be had by Mr. Grabowski and Dr. Moyer, because they know these sort of things. They can look at something. If something is not a real cost, like you say, got to go there to fill up anyway, then the two of them are going to say, of course we're not going to expect you to pay for it. Okay? That's why operations should always be discussed by the administration and not by the elected officials.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that we're clear that, I mean, I'm just hearing things right now that concern me. All of a sudden, we have a lot of these negotiations and things keep popping up that we're unaware of.
Okay. So, and let me bring it back to reality as it relates to this gravel lot, which is, it is the city's expectation and the commitment. I think there was the commitment from the school board was we would move as fast as possible. In fact, the hope was at the time, when we closed the Madison deal back at end of August, beginning of September, that we would actually get this gravel lot done last year. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to put on all of us, we're behind. Let's get, the plan is to put a shovel in the ground on this project this year, and we're already halfway through February. So I'm going to ask, which I've been doing all along, so I'm not going to ask, I'm going to remind staff and elected officials that we are fast tracking this, and let's get all this stuff hammered out and get something into the school district's hand ASAP. And if the attorneys or whomever want to talk daily, I'm all for it. But I just want to, for the people who are listening, we're talking about a lot of details. The intention is for this project to go forward as soon as possible. In fact, I don't see any reason why. Howard, I know we do timelines. I'm going to put Howard on the spot. We do timelines at the beginning of every committee meeting. Is this end of school year as well? No. Sooner? We're going to do our best to make it sooner.
To get it done as soon as we can.
Okay.
Where is this in the design process?
Very preliminary.
We've paid.
So even if you had the property, you wouldn't be able to bid it this year, would you?
Wrong answer, Howard. I will put a shovel in the ground myself if we get this, okay? I will drive the Bobcat or whatever it is.
And I'll help you. And I know Alderman Wagner will too, because it's in our ward.
Planning and engineering, which is underway. Howard's an engineer. You ask an engineer a question like that, you're not going to get. I'm just telling you right now.
Timelines.
I understand timeline's important.
Timeline's a great idea, and that way we'll be able to know when you're in final design and when you have bid plans, and we'll have a target then.
All right. Yesterday, as far as I'm concerned, Howard, okay?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just in the Public Works Committee, we do have a timeline that's specified. We do have a timeline that's specified for the project, but a lot of it's hinging on the IGA. Okay? So I think it's important to get past that, and then things can run very quickly after that point.
Well, let me ask, are you going to do design before you have an IGA, or are you going to wait until you have a signed IGA to do design?
No, we're probably going to do design first. In fact, we are in design. It's just in preliminary, but we've already written the check and we've given the
Well, then it'll give us a target.
Yeah. In fact, for anybody who's listening, not only are there's timelines for every single stormwater project in the city, they're on our website, whether it's every week, every other week, it's on the Public Works agenda, but it's also, I believe, on the timeline, on the main city website. So timeline exists. That's it for gravel lot. Anything else? Mr. McDonough? Okay. Yeah.
It just seems like that's news to you, and I just want to make sure that there are timelines for all these projects. I just want to make sure. It's not news, so you did know there was timeline. Oh, no, I want to just make sure that Dr. Moyer knows that there's a timeline as well.
If the city communicates a timeline, we will do our best to meet the timeline. Has one I mean, if you give a timeline to someone, they either respond, no, I can't do it, or yes, I will. And that's, so has a timeline been communicated to Dr. Moore?
I don't think I can answer that.
Yes.
Okay. But every meeting that we've discussed it is also public. The information's already online, so.
Okay. I'm going to reach over and turn that microphone off. All right, Brian Gravel Lot, we're done. No other comments on that. We have York, or I think on the website it's actually called College View Project, and we have a Jackson project. And we received a letter from Dave Moyer, and in our last communications meeting, Ms. Bastido confirmed that those projects are on hold, pending further evaluation from school district on how Madison goes and other stuff. So that stuff's just on hold for now.
Just to reiterate, there's a couple of reasons why the board has decided that it prefers to do one project at a time. The first is that, and Bryan is not a dual use project, the other projects are dual use. And the board has an inclination that it really wants to see that dual use is what's promised. So what the board would like to see, is like to see Madison happen, like to see how it goes through a year, and then be able to evaluate how these other projects either move forward or need adjustment or whatever. And so that's an element of it. You want the second one?
Go ahead, John, why don't you?
Second reason is the approval of each project is going to require full discussion by the board of the details of that project, how it'll be implemented. And again, the experience with Madison will be part of informing that. One thing I noticed about the York project is the report only lists alternative one. Was there only one alternative? Was there an alternatives analysis that was done offline?
Alternative in terms of where it's located?
An alternatives analysis that you do in a concept formation. The Burke report that was done in 2014? Okay, only has one alternative.
Okay, so I mean, your question is, it says alternative one.
Right.
And you're asking is there an alternative two?
I'm asking, was there an alternatives analysis? I assume there was, if that's the concept that you're proposing. And would you share that with the board?
Sure. I'll tell you what. I can tell you this, John, is that way back when York High School was built, and maybe that's why they're calling it alternatives. I don't know. I'm only aware of one, what I'll call current project, one current proposal that's, let's say, 1 or 2 years old. When York High School was rebuilt, I don't know how long ago that was, 15 years ago, there was an actual project on the books to run a pipe from York High School to the quarry. So that was 15 years ago. That's the only alternate I'm aware of. We'll double check and see if there's any other alternates. But the one that's on our website, it says alternate. I don't know if that's a typo or whatever it is. If there's another one, we'll find out, and we'll get you a copy if there is one. Okay? Alderman Mulliner, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I do. These two areas, I understand that the school district would like to put them on hold until they see how Madison works out. And I understand the logic behind that. My concern is that I'm going to have a very difficult time going to my constituents in the Jackson area, especially the Jackson area, where at Spring and Jackson, it's a lake every time it rains, and tell them that we're going to put on hold the Jackson project because of the fact that they just want to see if a project works at Madison. I have to feel comfortable that there's some way that we can continue these discussions and continue this project moving forward at a minimum level so that we can move this forward, because if Alderman Wagner and I walk down into that area during the next flood and we say, well, we're just not going to do anything for another year, I think it'll be the first lynching in the in the state of Illinois in probably 150 years. We have to start looking at these and start discussing these a little bit. And I have a feeling that the people around York High School would feel very similar, for us to say we're just not going to do anything. I think that's, for a while, that's going to be a real problem for the people who represent those areas. So we have to get focused on working on these areas. It's taken a long time to get through to where we're at right now, and we just have to be prepared to do something down in these areas.
Is the year just a suggestion, or is that actually a request?
That is the consensus of the board, that's what they want to do.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure I heard that right. So let's just say that the Madison project goes forward and it'll be completed this year. Now, whether or not kids end up playing on it, who knows when. It'll probably be completed end of summer or fall, let's just say. So do you want to go, I'm just trying to get an idea. So we're in 2016. I want to understand the consensus comment. Does that mean that the school board would like to see a full season 2017 and then fall of 2017, winter of 2017, 18? That's my take on what you said on the timeline for reconsideration. Does that sound about right?
When the board said 1 year, I didn't dig deeper than that, but it sounds like you're saying 1 year is really 2. I don't think there was any intention of the board to go 2 years.
Okay. I'm asking. I understand what you've said. I understand what the board said. Alderman Mulliner said it. I'll say it a little differently. I understand what you said. I understand you want to wait and find out. I disagree with that. I think you recognize that probably the city council would disagree with that decision. I just want to get an idea. So I would say maybe next time, if you have an idea, because let's do this. We have a timeline. We're going to find out when because Howard's here, he loves being here. We're going to get a projection as to when that project's going to be completed, and I would just like to maybe drill down a little bit so that, as Alderman Mulliner said, when we talk to these residents, okay, a school district wants to wait, it's on hold, these projects are on hold because they want to see how Madison performs. I guess we're looking for a little better definition, that's all.
And can I add one thing? I'm sorry, everybody knows I just kind of speak my mind. I would strongly suggest that if you feel that you need to wait that year, that the school board meeting that you discussed that at is at Jackson School. Publicly at Jackson School, so that I can make sure that we have all the people who come and knock on my door on the flooding can be there.
Sorry,
Or we could hold it at York High School, which is where you're expecting to store the water. We could do that too. Or we can hold it here.
If you speak your mind, what do I do?
Believe me, I know.
The project, nothing further. I apologize.
I'm not sure there's much to add. I think Mr. McDonough has given us a pretty good perspective on the school board and their positions on the various projects. I think there's a couple of things that Jim Rogers has to iron out with Dave Moyer. I don't know if Jim Rogers is actually going to have much to say. Jim Grabowski will hammer some stuff with Dave Moyer. Pat, it's coming to your committee sooner than later, so we'll get an IGA proposal to the school district as soon as possible. Anything else to add from this side of the table as it relates to any of the school district projects? We good? Okay. Any other business that I missed? Either side? I just recapped school district where we are. Park District has the signed IGA. We will wait to see what Jim Rogers has to say about approaching the DNR early to discuss some of the Golden Meadows project, and the Golden Meadows project response and IGA will be coming from the city to the Park District shortly. I think that's about it. Have I missed anything from anybody? Okay, I appreciate everyone's patience on this. But we are going to set another meeting. Ms. Ferrantino, you told me something about when the next two park board meetings are.
I did. The 9th and 23rd.
And seeing as how the Golden Meadows, as we discussed, the Golden Meadows report out of, in its fast track of a timeline, the Golden Meadows report, which would be requesting a response from Park District, would be the 7th, which means the Park District wouldn't get it until the 8th. While I would certainly appreciate if the Park District would discuss it on the 9th, I know there's no guarantees, especially because I don't even know what you're going to be looking at. That's my way of saying I think we hold the next meeting on the 24th of March. When's spring break, John?
That week after.
Okay. I'm going to propose the 24th as our next meeting, because I do think there's going to be communication going. Okay, well, that's why we have 14 people, and they've got 7, and they've got 7. So I'm not willing to go longer than a month. I'll move it up to the 17th, but I'd rather have the Park District have two meetings under their belt and get a response on Golden Meadows. In my opinion, that's the quickest way to get the answers to the residents.
I think the 24th gives us the best option to really discuss it at the meeting if we're going to be pushed on the 9th if we don't get it till the 8th. So
I agree. So we're going to go with the 24th. John, how's that sound? All right, John's in full agreement. The 24th, right? 24th of March. School Park City, set meeting date. Anything else before I shut this meeting down? Call it to a close. All right, I want to thank everyone for their participation. One last thing I will say. You have heard a couple of jests up here this evening, and by no way, shape, or form should that be interpreted that we are not taking these projects serious. I've been doing this now almost 3 solid years, and sometimes humor is a way to not go absolutely crazy. But we are making progress. Again, I will close by saying, please go to our city website. I think we're going to have 5, 6, 7 projects in the ground this year. That is a huge accomplishment from where we were 2 years ago. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you on the 24th.